Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. My name is Carmen Yetzi Mazzara. I serve as Executive Director of APSIA, the Association of Professional Schools of International Affairs. We're so glad to be partnering with Women in Government Relations for this look at best practices in applying to mid-career programs. I'm joined today by my colleagues Marnie Mitchell from the Harvard Kennedy School and Martina Leintz from the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies, which we just call SICE because it's almost as long as saying APSIA all in one go. As I mentioned, we are able to record this session and it will be available through the APSIA YouTube page afterwards, and I'll put that address in the chat. As we go through, please feel free if you have any questions. We have a nice informal session, a nice small group here today to throw your questions in the chat as well. And I'm sure that Marnie and Martina will give you some ways to follow up with them if you particularly want to zero in on one of their programs. So what I'm going to do very briefly is walk you through some high-level best practices, and then I'm going to invite Marnie and Martina to share specifics about their programs overall. So can somebody give me a thumbs up? You can see the screen. Everything's good. Yes, maybe. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Charlotte. The big yellow hand, gotta love it. So deciding about mid-career programs requires, in many cases, some different considerations than if you were thinking about a traditional master's program. Obviously, one of the key considerations in this effort is the timing aspect of it. When are you free? Do you have in the course of your life 5 to 10 hours a week for coursework, for group projects, for assignments, for all of those components that go into adding an academic program into your life? And as you think about those programs and think about those kinds of decisions, it might shape exactly which program makes the most sense for you and what the right fit is. Similarly, as you think about the way your time is divided up over the course of the week, is it consistent enough to build in a structured set of classes? Do you have the kind of position where you're often called in at the last minute to take something on? Is it possible to build in a regular course schedule to the busy life that you already have? Another important consideration for many is the elements of travel. How often are you on the road when such things are possible again? And how does that influence the kind of program that you're going to need to select? Something on the weekends, something in the evenings, something that happens and has that kind of flexibility to let you do the kinds of travel and professional life that you're going to theoretically continue to have while you would continue with this mid-career program. Obviously, another important consideration when you're deciding whether or not to go and what makes sense is what are the trade-offs in your life? What are those other considerations that currently fill up and are built into your time? Is it family care? Is it volunteer work? Is there some other consideration that's going to need to be budgeted around or perhaps traded off while you pursue this particular program? Is there also someone in your life who might be able to pick up some of those pieces while you pursue this degree? And so these are some of the important considerations as you start to think about whether it makes sense to do this and how you're going to get it done and what kind of program is the right fit for you. Some of the other important considerations, of course, are why would you go? Why are the impetuses that would bring you to a mid-career program? So what is the level of professional advancement, of ambition that you have that you cannot obtain without it? What is the fit of one particular program over another? How do these pieces come together to help that mid-career program be a springboard into the next phase, the next generation of your professional life? So these are all different questions that only you can really answer for yourself as you start to think about what kind of and whether or not a mid-career program makes the most sense for you. And when my colleagues share a little bit about their programs, they might be able to also tell you a little bit about how they try to answer these questions for students or help students answer these questions for themselves. So where possible, and we understand that it's not always possible, we really encourage you to start the discernment process about 12 months before you would want to enroll. There's nothing hard and fast about this rule. We just think it's a great way to give yourself a lot of runtime to do the exploration and the research to make sure that you figure out what kind of program makes the most sense for you. And we'll talk about some other questions that you can ask yourself if you, in the previous set, have decided, yes, this is really something that I think I want to do. We encourage you to do a lot of discernment, a lot of research, really look at all of the different kinds of programs that are out there. We encourage you to start a spreadsheet or a Google Doc or a list, however you keep track of information. Now at the beginning is really the time to do that so that you can make sure that all of the right pieces go into the right place. At the very beginning is also the time to start to build in the financial considerations and really take a look at your own financial situation. We really think that application and financial considerations need to happen simultaneously to make sure that all of those pieces come together at the right time. And you can start to look at financial aid and financing options from the beginning as you start this exploration process. So what kinds of questions do we encourage you to ask yourself as you're trying to weigh between programs? Obviously, one of the key questions is, what will you study? And that's not just about what the name of the program is. It really is about the field. It's about the structure of the program. What is it that you are trying to master as a mid-career professional that's really going to help to propel you forward and make it worth all of the yeses you gave to yourself on that first slide with all of those considerations? Thinking about the qualifications and the admissions criteria that each individual school is going to have. Some schools are going to have a minimum, for mid-career programs, most schools are going to have a number of minimum years of work experience. Some are going to ask for more specialized experience. Some are really going to be looking for a broad set of experiences. There's going to be lots of different considerations, but there's not necessarily going to be any one magic thing that's going to get you in or keep you out. So understanding how you fit vis-a-vis that imaginary average candidate for these programs that my colleagues are going to be able to tell you and talk to you about. But this can be an important consideration too, so that you don't only apply to programs where you might be a bit of a stretch, where you don't only apply to programs where everybody looks like you, and where you also have a balance of the programs where you might be really competitive and you can get a sense of how you fall vis-a-vis that imaginary general candidate that schools might put forward. Another consideration too, if you will be moving for a particular program, and mid-careers in some ways have a little bit more flexibility in this, is do you like being where that program is? Can you move your life to go to that place? Is it online? What is the mix of the online and in-person if such things are happening again in the fall, which many schools we think will be? So adding in that important element of what is the living environment? How well does it set you up for success? And are you going to be able to thrive in those precious non-academic times and non-work times to be sure that you like being where that program is, whether it's for a short period of time over a weekend program or for a longer period of time if it's maybe a year-long program that has more of a residency component. Obviously, the financial consideration is an important element as well. Looking honestly at yourself, looking at honestly at your aptitude or your tolerance for debt, what you can take on, what kinds of pieces need to be built into the rest of your life to make these kinds of programs affordable. And that might also help you too with the discernment of which kinds of programs make the most sense. But as with all of these considerations, the most important question I would argue is, what is the fit of what you're going to get out of that particular program to what you would like to do on the other side of it? How does the toolkit that you will leave with tee you up for that advancement or that next step in your career that might be the reason that's driving you to seek the mid-career degree in the first place? Once you've cast that wide net and started to do the discernment, we really encourage you to start to get to know the schools that you're interested in. Come to talk to my colleagues here and at all of the different kinds of events that they have, and start to understand, what are the admissions committees looking for? What sorts of things do you need to draw out in your application that are going to help you stand out in a good way? And once you've cast that net and started to focus, finalize that list of desired programs and think about places where your application may not yet be as strong as you want it to be. If you can start to work on some of those weaknesses, now is really a great time. This is probably about 6 to 9 months out. You can start to chip away at those pieces, maybe work on some elements that are going to make sure the application you turn in really does tee you up to be as competitive as possible for that program that you've really focused in on. This is really also a time to start to gather all of the different application pieces and materials and knock out the things that are easier to pull together so that down the line, you can really invest the time in the things that are going to take more effort, going to take more unpacking. And as always, you have to keep that financial aid piece at the same time as you're working on all of the application pieces. They always have to happen hand in hand. Every school is going to be different. And again, my colleagues are going to share with you a little bit more about what they're asking for. But on the whole, you're going to find that schools might ask for an application form, an application fee, They might be looking for a CV or a resume. They're different things. Be sure you turn in whichever one the school has actually asked for. In some cases, they might need the transcripts from the different institutions you've attended. Even if it's been a long time since you earned your BA, you're going to need to go back to that school and ask for your transcripts. Particularly with COVID, a lot of the lead time that's needed for a university to turn those around that has gotten longer. So be sure you leave enough time for the request to go in, to be processed, and to be sent to the school. Because again, a lot of offices are on part-time staffing or people are working remote. But that's really something that can slow down an application. In some cases, you may need to turn in standardized tests. The schools will share with you which tests they're asking for if they ask for them. So be sure, again, you plan ahead if you need to take them, if you need to take them a second time. Again, this has to be part of your consideration and your timing process. Most schools are going to ask for a personal statement or topical essays. And we can talk a little bit about personal statements in a minute, but this can also be a really critical component with your application. It's your chance to really share your narrative and tell your story. So we'll give you some tips on that in just a second. Some of them are going to ask for letters of recommendation, and they will give you a sense of exactly what kind of letters they're looking for. With a mid-career program, again, they're going to want to have some sense of your professional work, your professional life, and how this fits in. So there's a good chance that you're going to need to think now about who you would want to be those letters of reference, who you want to tell that story on your behalf with your professional hat on, and how that fits into the way you navigate your larger employer space. And then also in some cases, you may need financial statements and bank statements as part of that financial aid consideration. So again, this is not a firm list. It's going to vary by school completely, which is why that Google Sheet or tracking document you created in the beginning is so important, because that's how you make sure that whatever schools ask for actually gets delivered to them in the right time and place. So essays and personal statements, we know are one of those pain points often in an application. So what I really encourage you to do is to tell a story the school can only hear from you. Tell me about all of that work experience that you're going to bring to the table. Maybe you have volunteer experience, life experience, all of these other pieces that have defined who you were. Tell me about who you are, this person who's now interested in this mid-career degree. Why now? What is it about this moment? And what is it about this program at this distinct point in time that are going to propel you into who you want to be? So that journey of who you were, who you are, and who you want to be is something they're really only going to hear from you. And as they read through the applications, and in some cases, it's many, many applications, that distinct story, that distinct narrative is going to help you stand out and make it very clear that you've done your homework, you see this program, you see what it's going to be able to deliver, and you want to be a part of that and have that be part of your professional narrative and your professional journey. So that particular story is one they can only hear from you, and it can really help your essay stand out in a clear, concise way that makes their school part of your journey. So we started wide and we focused and we focused and we focused. And then just before the application is due, you have to make sure that you finalized and put all of the right touches on your materials for admission, any financial aid considerations, scholarships, all of those different pieces. You need to check in with any recommenders, all of those outside folks. I'm sure you all know this from having written letters yourself. But for me, I freely admit that at 11:59 on the night that it's due, there are times when I'm putting the last touches on that letter of rec because I forgot. So you need to make sure that the people you've asked to be of assistance to you don't forget, have that at their disposal, and are ready to help you craft this narrative that this is the right program for you and you are the right candidate for them. And then comes that wonderful, scary, amazing, terrible day when you click submit and it all goes into the system. And it was scary for me, I remember distinctly, but it's also a good day because it's the product of all of this research and discernment and asking yourself all these questions and putting together this narrative about why this particular program is really going to be the next step professionally for you or part of the next step professionally for you. Because you've worked so hard, we really encourage you to avoid foolish mistakes that are going to possibly undercut the narrative you're trying to put forward. One of the most basic things is follow directions. This is a simple thing. You would be amazed at how many people cannot handle it though. If a school asks for 3 letters of recommendation, send them 3 letters of recommendation. Don't send 5, don't send 2, send what they asked for. You also need to make sure that all of the other pieces like transcripts and those things that you think you sent or you think you requested actually got turned in. It sounds ridiculous, but you would be amazed at how many people cannot handle this very basic step of doing what you've been asked to do. It's also important as you read through all of your materials, just as you would in a professional setting, to make sure they're typo free, to make sure that they are going to the right institution. I see a lot of students who really want to go to both Georgetown and George Washington University. And so they send this glowing essay about how badly they want to go to Georgetown. They send it to George Washington. And when George Washington reads it, they say, that's lovely. I really hope that kid gets in. But they don't want to go to George Washington, so away it goes. Make sure that things go to the place you think you sent them. But another common thing that happens, particularly with essays, ask someone else to read it and tell you about you back to you. Have them describe the kind of person that comes forward. You've done all this homework, you've done all this discernment about yourself. You know the version that you want to present to these schools and how it connects to what they're looking for. Make sure that version of yourself comes through. And that's one of the easiest ways to do that, is just to share it with someone else and have them relate back to you what they drew out of that essay. In some cases, this is the main way a school is going to get to know you. So be sure that the version of yourself you're trying to present is the one that comes forward. And that's where our last common mistake comes in. Do the discernment. Think about why you want to be a part of this particular program. Think about the kinds of questions that the admissions office might have as they read your materials. Maybe over the course of your journey so far, you had a health problem. Maybe you had family care considerations. Maybe you had all of these different things that happen in the course of our lives. It's okay to talk about those things, to share how that's also part of your narrative. If something happened that complicated your professional life, that maybe complicated your academic life, it's okay to talk about it. In some cases, I think I would argue it's beneficial to talk about it rather than having the committee try to guess and fill in those holes on their own. If there is something that you're not sure you really want to share, or you don't know where the line is between complete and total overshare and this triumphant story of overcoming something and dealing with all of these challenges, this is where my colleagues that we have here on the line and throughout the whole APSEA family on the admission side can really be helpful. You can say, look, there's this thing that happened. I'm not sure how best to talk about it. You're going to see a hiccup in my professional life. You're going to see something in all of the documents I'm going to share with you. Can you help me figure out where the line is between totally oversharing and triumphant story of overcoming a challenge? And they will be a part of that guidance. That's part of the great work that they do in helping students figure out and put their applications together. So after the deadline, sadly, your work still isn't done. You have to make sure that everything you think you sent, they got. And most of my colleagues have virtual systems at this point that will show you exactly what came through. Just as you would expect in any other professional setting, you have to thank the people who wrote you letters of recommendation. And you also have to continue with the discernment. Keep up with your financial planning. Keep up with learning about the schools. If they have visit days, if they have online sessions, go learn, continue to find out which program makes the most sense for you. My hope for all of you, of course, is that you get into absolutely every graduate school and mid-career program that you apply to, but at some point you have to choose. So the learning process has to continue, and you have to keep moving forward. So those are the different kinds of steps that you can take. And one of the most common questions that I get is, what is it that schools really are looking for? What's the secret to this whole process? And I would say it's really a holistic thing. That's why they ask for all of those different points of information, essays and letters of rec and resumes and tests and all of those pieces. Part of it is wanting to understand your aptitude for study. It is an academic program. It's not some other kind of mid-career professional development, but they are also seeking that sense of broader professional direction. Why is this going to be helping your narrative? What is it about this that's going to really move your professional sense forward? The other key piece is not just your aptitude for study and your sense of professional direction, but what can you contribute that's going to elevate everybody else's academic and professional success. And this too is where through your essays, through your letters of rec, through your resume, you can talk about the distinct things that you can bring into the classroom and why they should want you to bring those things into the classroom. So it really is a whole picture that they're trying to put together as they do this. We at APSIA have a ton of different pieces of information and events, and I will be happy to share these slides with anyone afterwards if you want to send me an email. We do invite you to come to the many different activities that we have throughout the year. In 2021, everything will be virtual, and a lot of them are great ways to start to build those relationships with schools. We do have a filterable directory of fellowships and scholarships information. Some of it is for mid-career, more of it is for folks a little earlier in the pipeline. We have a whole directory of all of the graduate schools and programs in the APSIA family. And if you're thinking about pivoting from one industry to another, we also have a career guide that unpacks lots of different possibilities. And we have an active job board as well that shares many different positions, both at APSIA schools, but also throughout a large network of partners. And we share as many of those different kinds of information, not only on the job board, but also across lots of different social media channels. So with that, I am very pleased to invite my colleagues to unpack some of their particular programs. We're going to go in alphabetical order, no distinct love for anything other than the English language alphabet. And so to start off, I'm going to invite my colleague Marnie Mitchell from the Harvard Kennedy School to share more about their programs. Marnie?
Hi, thank you. That was a really great overview. A lot of great advice, and always things that, whenever I do these presentations, it's great to hear other people saying it too. But it was a lot of great advice. And one of the things that really stood out to me about especially a mid-career program is the why this program, what do I want to get out of this program kind of thing, because our program is a 1-year full-time in-person program. So people are coming to Cambridge for a full year. So being able to know that you have that time and you're at a point in your career where either you're looking to change your career path, so this is the right time to take a year and do it, or the organization that you're working for will allow you to go for a year to do that, is something to consider. We look for at least 7 years of full-time professional work experience for our mid-career program. And it's not a set type of work experience, but we are looking for it to make sense in the program. So what is it that you're hoping to get from the program that will help you in the next point? If you are looking to pivot, what is it in this program that fits with your past work experience that's going to help you pivot? And if you're looking to continue, what are the skill sets that you need to get to the next level where you already are or in an organization? The mid-career program at the Kennedy School is very flexible. And a lot of that comes from the fact that we are admitting people who have knowledge and work experience. So we think they kind of know the curriculum that they want to build to help them get to the next level. So they don't have to go through core courses. So because it's flexible, the advice that I always give people too is along the lines similar of what Carmen said, have an idea of what you would want to get out of a program, and do we have that there? Do we have the courses that you're looking for? Are there alumni who've gone through our program that have done similar things that you can kind of talk to about how they set up their program? The nice thing about the mid-career program is we have a 5-week summer program that's part of it. So the mid-career students come a little bit earlier, and they not only get to know each other because it is a very close-knit cohort of students, and the thing that's nice is that they do networking right from the beginning, right? So they meet each other for these 5 weeks in the summer, and they're already hitting the ground running, networking and meeting people in organizations they might want to work for, or organizations that they've worked for before. So they have that networking opportunity, but it's also this opportunity for you to come and learn kind of the skills that are going to be taught within the program, because students who are coming to the mid-career program are a little bit farther away from that undergrad education than some of the other master's programs. So it's refreshing skills, giving you time to figure out what the skills you need to refresh more are, and also giving you time to meet with faculty and staff that can help you set up what the year would look like. So we're not going to let people just come in and, no help at all, just pick it. But it's a great opportunity. So like I said, it's 1 year. There's the summer program. One of the things that I hit on a little bit is that your classmates, it's a program where people are coming in with a lot of work experience, a lot of world leaders. So there's a lot of people internationally in this program. So it's an opportunity to, meet leaders from all over the world and kind of have a conversation about leadership and policy at that level. It is a master's in public administration degree. So you graduate with an MPA. And students, we just had an alumni panel today, and they were talking about how one of the things that they really appreciated about the program was that you also interact with all of the other programs as well. So it's not as though this mid-career program is separate from all the other programs. You're on campus with the two-year program students as well, and you take classes with two-year students. So there's all different kinds of levels of experience and, industries and organizations that are kind of coming together and in the classroom solving problems together, because that really is what the mid-career program is about. It's creating leaders that are going to go into the world and solve the big problems, the people who are going to make changes. And one of the things I'll say specifically for a mid-career program is you do want to look at the essays. Our essays are different from our two-year programs for the mid-career program. And it's a very holistic approach. So we're looking at your transcripts, but as Carmen hit on, you can tell us if there was a semester that was bad. I know a lot of times when people are looking at mid-career programs, they think, oh, 1998 when I did my undergrad is so different than where I am now, but they're going to judge on this transcript. But we're looking at everything. So your work experience says a lot. There's places to talk about what you do in your work. So projects and things like that. And also if you've taken a class, you can send us that transcript too, because something that you did 10 years closer, a newer class means a lot to us. It tells us that you've done something and you've improved some skills. So I always want to tell people, don't worry that we're just going to focus on what you did at 18. And, that first year, you can tell us about it. You can give us some information about it. And also we are looking at your career trajectory and things that you've done in your work experience as well. And then I'll also say for mid-career students, the recommendations are a little bit different. You don't necessarily need academic recommenders. You can focus on professional recommenders for our program. So those are just some specifics about our program. I'm going to pass it along and we'll be here for questions, I imagine.
Thank you, Marnie. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. And I echo Marnie's comments about Carmen's presentation. It was, she provided so much helpful information, and hopefully you'll take that all to heart. And she will be happy to share her slides with you. So if that would be helpful, don't hesitate to reach out about that. So Johns Hopkins SAIS is one of 9 divisions of the Maine University. We're a little unique in that we are in DuPont Circle, Washington, D.C. We're not in Baltimore with the main campus. And we are only a graduate school where we are. So you're only among other graduate students, either at the master's level or the doctoral level. And it makes for a really fantastic dynamic because the faculty understand that everybody on campus is at a minimum a master's degree student. So it sort of raises the level of discourse right off the bat. So it's a very stimulating, intellectually environment. We have 3 mid-career programs. One is very similar to the one that Marnie described at the Kennedy School, except for us, it has a little bit more of an international bent. It's the Master of International Public Policy. And there are 2 options with that program. You can pursue that full-time, and that takes just 1 academic year. So if you start in the fall, it's literally only 9 months. You start at the end of August, you're done mid-May, or you can start it in the spring, which weirdly is January. To me, that's still winter, but we consider that spring. So you start at the end of January, you'd go for the semester, you'd have the summer off, and then you come back in the fall and you finish in December. So it takes 11 months start to finish. But I really like that option for people who are pivoting in their career. because what it does is it affords you a summer in between the 2 semesters to pursue an internship in a new field. So say, you're currently working in the public sector, but maybe you just want to explore the private sector or the NGO world, or maybe you want to work for the World Bank or a multilateral. That would give you the opportunity to sort of dip your toes in before you complete the program. But with the MIPP, because we do have so many students in government that want to pursue this degree who don't want to give up their jobs while they're pursuing it, we do permit you to pursue this degree part-time as well. Doing it part-time would take you 2 years, taking 2 courses each semester over 4 semesters. You could potentially shorten it if you wanted to go in the summer too, but bank on 2 years. So that's the first option. In the MIPP degree. And then the second one is a program that was designed specifically with working professionals in mind. And it's the Master of Arts in Global Policy, MAGP. And it's really set up to be an executive style program. So you're only on campus on a Friday and Saturday twice a month. So you're there one weekend, then you go back to your life for 2 weeks and you come back for another Friday and Saturday. And that program is 16 months start to finish. You actually complete more credits in that program than you do in the MIPP. You complete 41 credits. It's a longer program in that sense, but you complete it in a shorter timeline than you would if you were pursuing the MIPP. It's a cohort-based program, so you're together with the same group of students throughout. And 9 of the 14 courses, or excuse me, 13 courses you would take would be prescribed. Everybody's in those together, and then you would have 4 electives. Whereas the MIPP allows you to fully customize your program. You take 32 credits, which usually translates to 8 courses. But what those 8 courses are can literally be whatever you want them to be. So if you want to focus just on let's say American foreign policy, you can do that. But if you want to focus on a bunch of different things, you're interested in the environment, international development, Latin America, you can take classes from all of those different areas of study. It's totally up to you. And that really is the unique part about that program. For both of these programs, we like to see at least 7 years of full-time work experience. With the MIPP program, it's fine to do that if you're a career changer and let's say, you've been working in the government space, but maybe you want to see how to apply those skills and at the world stage. You want to maybe now go work for the United Nations. This program totally permits you to be a career changer. You can reinvent yourself. With the Master of Arts in Global Policy, you really need to be working in some capacity that touches the international space. So if you're working for, let's say, Treasury, but you're working on global issues, that's a perfect fit. Or if you're in an intelligence agency working on cybersecurity or something, again, that's perfectly relevant. So those are the 2 graduate and master's programs that we have for mid-careers. We also have a practitioner's doctorate, a Doctor of International Affairs, which is a really new program. It's a super new concept in the IR space. To our knowledge, we're the only major research institution offering one in the US. And it's very much like, there are professional doctorates like the EDD in education. It's the same principle. So it's not a credential for somebody who wants to be a tenure track faculty member. You should still pursue a PhD if that's your goal. But if you're not interested in working in academia, you just want to be a subject matter expert in your area of international relations, this might be a good fit for you. You do not have to have a prior master's degree to be considered for this program. You just need to have a minimum of 5 years of work experience. So one of the things that, regardless of the program that you might pursue at SAIS, I always like to talk about is what sets us apart, makes us unique. And there are 5 things I want to touch on really quickly. One is location. We're right in the heart of Washington on Think Tank Row. We're literally across the street from the Brookings Institution. We're walking distance from so many of the major federal organizations and the multilaterals. And that just permits, incredible opportunities for our students. But we also have campuses in Bologna, Italy, and Nanjing, China. So we are literally a global institution. And we have career coaches on all of those campuses so we can help students with a global job search. The second thing I would say is our faculty. Our faculty are the experts in their field. They are the ones writing the authoritative text. They are the thought leaders that the media turns to when they want somebody to weigh in on a pressing issue of the day. And they are advising both government leaders and industry leaders alike. They're a mix of tenured track faculty and practitioners. So you could have somebody who literally wrote the Iran policy for the Obama administration teaching you a class. So I think that the faculty are tremendous. And because, as I mentioned earlier, we're only a graduate school, the faculty are so ready to engage with you and to meet with you outside of class and to connect you with their networks and give you the advice on careers. And they really are one of our greatest resources. And also, our alumni are another fantastic resource. And the third thing that I like to point out about SAIS, we've been around a long time, 75 years. And so our tentacles are deep, particularly within government. We have SAISers all over the globe. They have their own alumni groups at many agencies, particularly at the Department of State, Treasury, Homeland Security, DOD. But they're also global. And many of our students tend to truly be global citizens. And it's really reassuring to them to know that if they have to move to a new city in a new country or even a new continent, they're going to be able to immediately connect with our alumni groups and have a ready source of friends and connections in that area. And then I would say also our students themselves. Earlier today, I was on a session with all of our admitted MIPP students for the fall, meeting with our current students in a virtual meet and greet. And the new students who were just admitted were just blown away by the talent, not only from the students who are already there, but from each other and from who's going to be their cohort. These are people with amazing life experiences from all over the globe. And wherever you end up for your graduate studies, I really, really encourage you to don't forget that piece. Don't forget how valuable your classmates are and make sure you take time to network with them, because going forward, those connections are going to mean so much. And then last, I'll just say, we do have a very big emphasis on mid-career at SAIS. We our 2-year Master of Arts in International Relations program is our largest program and our flagship program. But the second biggest program is the MIPP. And so you don't feel uncomfortable if you're, in your 30s or 40s or even 50s and you're on campus, because you won't be alone, because there will be a lot of other mid-career students there with you. In terms of what we're looking for, very similar to what both Carmen and Marnie have talked about. We take a holistic look at your application. Your work experience weighs very heavily, and we can be sort of forgiving of youthful indiscretions as long as you explain it to us and you have proven that your career arc has more than compensated for any shortcomings as a young, dumb 20-something. We don't require GRE or GMAT. It's entirely optional for our mid-career programs. We do require letters of reference, 2 of them, and it's fine for them both to be professional. You don't have to have an academic reference. We don't expect you, if you've been out of school for many years, to have kept in touch with faculty. But if you have, and they can attest to your strengths and capability to excel in a graduate program, by all means, that would be fine to have a faculty reference as well. And that was a lot of talking at you, so I'm going to shut up now and turn it back over to Carmen.
Thank you both so much. It might feel like a lot of talking, but I think it was also really critical, valuable information. Charlotte and Andrea, we have a very special opportunity for you as our remaining audience, co-conspirators on this question. to pick the brains of my colleagues in a way that you might not otherwise be able to. So the floor is yours. If either of you would like to raise your hand or put it in the chat. Otherwise, you got to keep listening to me, and really, who wants that? So would either of you like to jump in? All right, while they're formulating their question. Oh, please, yes, Andrea, go ahead.
I'm going to do it, but I was nervous because this is being recorded, and my question may be a little, let me turn on my camera, and my question may be a little, I'm going to ask it because I think I have to. It's really important to me to ask it. So with all this going on with equity, diversity, and inclusion, sometimes I have been in groups. I went to grad school at GW, where when you are the minority voice, there's a lot of disagreement or overlooking what you said. And you're kind of told what to do in the group. I don't know if that makes sense, but it does happen. So that I do want to go back. I do have lots of work experience in the community in corporate America and the military. But, and I now work for the federal government. But that is a concern for me given the climate, which I'm excited about the climate most of the time that we live in now. I'm glad to be alive during these times. But it is a climate of change, and I have to consider what that looks like for me going to a graduate program.
Would either of you like to jump?
I can jump in. Thanks for that question, Andrea. It's a great question. And I completely understand your concern. I can tell you that it's been, a tumultuous year in many ways, far beyond COVID. I've been really, really grateful that the university has been so proactive in making sure that students are being heard and their needs are being met. And, they've provided extra counseling and all sorts of things as people struggle through some of the issues that we've had to encounter, whether it's, police brutality or it's anti-Asian violence or what have you. We have a very, very robust student network of clubs involved in diversity and inclusion. And we have like a Black Student Alliance. We have many different groups, and they meet independently with their cohorts, but they also come together and meet collectively. And then they meet regularly with the administrative diversity and inclusion group, of which I'm a part. And I will say, and we can hear from Marnie as well, but my experience has been that the university is really wonderful about listening to the students and giving them the opportunity to share their concerns and then trying to address them. I will be really honest with you in that one area that I feel that, we struggle a little bit is I wish that we had more diversity in faculty. And that's something that I think a lot of institutions share in the IR space. In any event, we've done a much better job of sort of recruiting more female faculty, but in terms of other diversity, it's not where I want it to be or where many of us would like it to be, although we do have a number of international faculty, which is also a very welcome component. But certainly in terms of being heard, you would feel heard and you would feel empowered to share your thoughts and any ideas you had for engagement, improvement, all of the above.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what you said is very similar at the Kennedy School. I will say times like these always make institutions look at themselves and realize where their shortcomings are and realize that you can always be doing better. And I think that that is something that, as I said, schools are always looking at. But I do think one of the things that I really appreciate about the Kennedy School is there is a lot of room for students to be involved in decision making. So for example, we just hired some students to work with us in the admissions office who will be helping us look at our diversity and recruitment and look at, you know, how we're doing things. Also, our student government at the Kennedy School has a lot of power to request to talk to people, to be in different, as it was mentioned, organizations or part of different committees that look at things like hiring and course structure, like if things are being changed in courses. So I do feel like there's a lot of room for the student voice to be heard. And I also feel like there's just a lot of support systems in place. So the program directors are very open to working with students if there are complaints, if there are feelings of, you know, feeling like they're not being heard in the classroom. That is something that can readily be brought to the different program staff as well.
Thank you.
One more thing I'll add and encourage you to look into, Andrea, both for both of our schools and any others you may be looking at, is we have a diverse voices information session annually, sometimes a couple times a year, where we bring some of our students from underrepresented minorities who will talk about their experiences as a student and the resources they've been able to tap into. And we typically invite alumni to participate in those panel discussions as well. So look for those when you're looking at schools, and that can be a good way of learning more.
That's a good tip. Thanks so much.
I would also say too, there's a lot of student run sessions that take the administrator out of it, and where you can talk to actual students and their experience in the classroom. And I think those are really helpful when you're thinking about your comfort level in a classroom setting. So I would definitely look for those. And I know a lot of schools put those out as well.
That was going to be the one tip I was going to contribute to, was and ask to talk to alum. Sometimes there's the official channels, and I don't know of any of our schools that do it perfectly, but I know many of our schools that are really trying to take that deep dive that Martina and Marnie described. But the students in the alum will give you a sense, aside from the official structures, how it feels, and that might be a great sense for any of these kinds of questions.
Okay.
Alex says she doesn't have any questions. So I guess my other question to the two of you would be, for folks who are looking to pivot or have had, Andrea listed so many different experiences, military, government, all of these things, how do you find those things come together in a compelling narrative when you read it, especially if somebody is looking to pivot? I get this question a lot, like, I was doing this thing and now I want to do something else. How do you find that comes forward in a really good and clear way? Marnie?
Well, I think the thing that I would say is that it always has to make sense. And so you're never going to just get a degree and fall into a job right after having the degree. I mentioned the alumni panel a little earlier, but they, highlighted the fact that yes, you're a part of a network, and yes, you've gotten these skills, but you still have to kind of put in some work to get to where you want to be. So a lot of times, if people are looking to pivot, you want to make sure that it kind of fits, that they didn't do something and now they think that this degree is going to be the thing that just gets their foot in the door somewhere. There has to be some kind of interest or experience that kind of makes sense for the pivot to happen as well. So it's always like the degree isn't going to be the golden ticket into everywhere. You have to be able to make sense and have the career path fit. Now, with that said, it doesn't mean that someone can't completely pivot. A lot of times people who work in a certain field have done volunteer work in another area, and highlighting things outside of just necessarily what you've done professionally can help piece the puzzle together as well. So it might not just necessarily be like the jobs that you've been to, but you could have done research, you could have the schooling that you've done could have had a track that was different than the work that you've done. So kind of making it all make sense, and make it feel like you're not just taking a huge giant leap without having a little bit of a parachute with you.
Martina, other things to share?
I would agree with Marnie. I think being able to demonstrate a clarity of purpose, even if you don't have substantive experience in the career field that you want to enter, to the extent that you're able to demonstrate that you've really thought about it and you can glean from your past experiences, those sort of aha moments that led you to think, I really want to pursue this. So for you, for example, it could be when you were active duty, maybe you served overseas. Oh, you're on mute. Were you wanting to say something, Andrea?
Yeah, I got it off. I was psych services for soldiers and Marines. I wasn't the service. I wasn't.
Oh, okay,
I was
okay.
psych services.
Got it, got it. But you take my point, right? So it's just to be able to demonstrate through something, through volunteerism, through a past work experience.
I do have those.
Led you to.
I have the volunteer experience. So because I'm psych services, I do work now with the DC Medical Reserve Corps.
Mm-hmm.
They need a lot of help in Ward 7 and 8. I've deployed for HHS. I started out in the business world, corporate America, actually. And then I went back and did the psych work for my graduate degree at GWU. But I'm thinking globally a lot because I definitely see how that policy, it has to happen. Now working for HHS OpDev, COVID-19 is truly global. And I've learned a lot about the world in its health operations that I can in no way summarize right now. And I see both of you all smiling, so I'll stop talking to hear your thoughts.
But I mean, there's definitely pivot points that make sense in your just listening to the different types of work that you've done. You could definitely highlight certain things that you've done that might help you pivot into a certain way. And so I think that like hits on Carmen's question. It's not necessarily I've been working and now I'm jumping to another thing. There's all different things along the way that might make it clear as to why you want to transition. Like this job this year is making you think globally, and that makes sense, right? So that would be something that you would probably highlight in your essay, that work that you started doing this year made you think more globally.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much to Andrea for your great question, to Marnie and to Martina for all of your wonderful wisdom. I want to thank our colleagues at Women in Government Relations for co-sponsoring this event with us. And we look forward to seeing all of you at different APSIA events going forward, whether you're on one side of the Zoom screen or the other. Thanks to everyone for being a part of this, and we look forward to seeing you at upcoming APSIA activities. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Carmen. It was nice meeting you, Andrea.